Alright, in today's video we're going to take a look at ions, and this is a new word for us in chemistry. So if you're taking notes on Evernote, or if you're keeping a binder of notes, you might want to write down ion, and I'll define an ion here. An ion is formed when you take an atom, a neutral atom. So an ion is formed when you take a neutral atom, and all atoms are neutral. They're just born that way, like Lady Gaga. When you take a neutral atom and add or subtract. And I'm going to teach you a new symbol here, E minus. You can guess what E minus is, but E minus is the symbol for an electron. So an ion is a neutral atom that you've either added or subtracted electrons from. So let's take a look, a quick review here, and I've got two review questions here. So we know atoms have a net charge of, and you can pause the video or you can think about that, but you should say 0, which means an atom has the same number of protons as it does electrons, which then knowing that should make these two practice questions pretty simple. Here we've got this isotope of magnesium. We refer to this, by the way, as magnesium 24. There's a magnesium 23. There's a magnesium 25. This is magnesium 24. How many protons does it have? You should know it has 12. How many electrons does it have? You should also know that that's 12. Remember, the neutrons you'd find by subtracting 24 minus 12. That actually comes out to 12 as well. This atom has 12, 12, and 12. But that's just a coincidence. How about this one? Na22. Okay, so this is another way to write isotopes out. This is the mass number. How many protons? Well, it's not 22. You've actually got to look on the periodic table and find the atomic number of sodium, and you'll find that it's 11, and so it then has 11 electrons. Okay, so there's a quick review. Now let's take a look at this picture. Here is a magnesium atom. It's neutral. So in the center, try to think what that center part is called. This is the nucleus. In the nucleus, actually let me try this fun. I found these fun arrows. Let's see if they're as fun as I think they are. Wow, that's huge. I don't want that. I don't want it that big. That's too big. I don't know. Let's get rid of it. Let's try one more huge arrow here and see. I guess we'll do that. So there's the nucleus. And around the nucleus, in the cloud around, are the electrons. And like we talked about, they move so fast that they kind of, like the blades of a fan, they're kind of blurry. But there would be 12 electrons there. So there you can see 12 electrons, negative charge, 12 protons, positive charge, charges cancel, and you're left with a neutral atom. Now, what would happen if we lose, or if the magnesium would lose 2 electrons, as you see here? Well, a couple things would happen, and we'll talk about this. The size would shrink because you've lost electrons. So the cloud would get smaller. But that's not important for now. But the big thing is, you would still have 12 positive charges, but now you would only have 10 negative charges. And we'd have these 2 electrons that have gotten away. Now, why would electrons leave an atom? We'll talk about that in the next video, but it has to do, it's something they do to combine with another atom. They either have to lose or gain electrons to combine with another atom. But that's for the next video. For now, I want you to look at the symbol for magnesium. And it's no longer an atom like it was here. It is, and so you can see the name and the symbol here. It's Mg. And then this is called a superscript. It's written in the upper right hand corner, but you put the charge. This one is a 2 plus because it lost 2 electrons. So now there's 12 positives and only 10 negatives. So there's an extra 2 positives, which makes it a positive 2. one way to keep this in mind is I tell the kids a joke, and it's that two sodium atoms bumped into each other on the street. And the first sodium atom said, "Hey, you took one of my electrons." And the second sodium atom said, "Are you sure?" And the first one said, "Yeah, I'm positive." And so that joke, illustrating that joke, we have two NAs. If this Na loses one electron, it will now become a positive 1. Whoops, that's messy. It will now become a positive 1 charge. So basically, so the rules here, just to kind of keep it straight, lose electrons, you become positively charged. Become positively charged. And if you gain electrons, you become, the atom becomes an ion that's negatively charged. Okay, so these are the rules. So if you gain electrons, you become negatively charged as an atom. If an atom gains electrons, it becomes a negative ion. If an atom loses electrons, it becomes a positive ion. And those ions have names. So a positive ion is called a cation. And I remember this because the word cat has the T. The T kind of looks like a positive sign. So a positive ion is known as a cation. A negative, let's go black. A negative ion is known as an anion. Okay? So, for example, if we look at an atom, let's say we look at sulfur. Sulfur atom gains 2 electrons. So what does it become? Well, you should know that from the rules before, if you gain electrons, you become negatively charged. So it would now be sulfur 2 minus, and this is an anion because it's a negative ion. So we would say this is a sulfur anion. Now, another thing about the ions. Negative ions undergo a name change. I'll write this here. You add IDE. So what that means is this wouldn't be called a sulfur. This wouldn't be called a sulfur ion. That's not correct. You would actually call this a sulfide ion. Another one, let's do this. So here's O. Oxygen loses how many electrons? Well, you see it's a negative 2, so you should know that it loses 2 electrons. And this actually would be called an oxide ion. Okay? Alright, now let's take a look at aluminum. When aluminum forms an ion, it loses 3 electrons. So it's going to become aluminum 3 plus. So it is this a cation or an anion? Remember, the plus is cation. It's a positive ion. And its name would be still aluminum ion. If it's a positively charged ion, if it's a cation, the name is just still the name of the atom, the name of the element. By the way, aluminum, in England, and you look at aluminum, they pronounce it aluminium. We have taken out a letter here in aluminum, and so we pronounce it aluminum. But if you meet a British person, they will say aluminium. All right, and finally, when we look at the periodic table, we talked about before that when you look at a column on the periodic table. It's also known as a what? It's an F word. It's one of the F words you're allowed to say in class. Family, right? This is family. The families have similar properties. That's how Mendeleev knew that the elements belonged in these families. That's why this element, fluorine, isn't here, because fluorine has very similar properties to all the other elements in its family. And another property they have is they all form the same charge ions. So, very easy to remember. Family 1 forms +1. So these lose or gain electrons. That's right, they lose 1 electron. Family 2 all forms +2 ions. So these are +2 cations. Gain or lose electrons. That's right, loses 2 electrons. Family 3, we skip the transition metals. We'll talk about why, but skip them in terms of guessing the charges. This will be the next family. They form +3. And then if you look at the noble gases, they don't form ions. They don't lose or gain electrons. So they're 0. And then here these are -1. So they gain or lose. That's right, they gain 1. These are -2. They gain or lose. Gain 2. And these ions would be -3. So they gain 3. So there's a lot of information in this video. If you get lost or confused, watch it again. Bring questions to class. IM me on Skype. We'll figure it out together. And enjoy.